Hello friends, followers and channel members, welcome to another video here in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and in this video today I'm going to be showcasing a brand new approach into the famous Kathmandu airport. This is a brand new Rnp approach to runway 20, recently been devised and released by NavBlue. Now, for everybody not familiar with this airport, it is an airport that is surrounded by terrain and as such has had its fair share of accidents and incidents over the years, sadly several of them with loss of life. Runway 02 has always been the preferred approach, and that's had Rnp approaches in for a while now, but if you wanted to approach and land on runway 20, well, the only thing available until recently was a VOR circling approach. This wasn't open to Category D aircraft, and of course the minimums were much higher. NavBlue though now have released their brand new Rnp approach for runway 20, and here you can see is the chart. It can look a little bit confusing at first, particularly as the missed approach is also depicted on this chart as well. But essentially we have three entry points for this approach. We have ingress to the east, we have dark to the northwest, and finally at the southwestern corner we also have Danf. All of these converge to take us to Kilo Tango 424. Now, remembering of course this is a non-precision approach, so it doesn't mean that you can use the autopilot to fully land at this approach. One of the things you also need to check before even starting is that the runway visual range is above the minimums, 3,500 meters, and we need to set the decision altitude of 4,705. One of the other things you need to check is the required navigation performance is above the minimum stated here, 0.30, and I'll show you how to do that in a little while. Just like all our Nav and Rnp approaches, we have the final approach point, and the mandatory altitude here is 7,400. By this point we will be able to push for the approach mode, and then we can use the final approach mode to bring us down towards the runway. Once that gets us down below the cloud base and we're happy and visual with the runway, we'll knock off the autopilot and fly her in manually. If final approach mode isn't working in your aircraft, then what we can do here in the simulator is we can also use FPA and set a descent angle of 3 degrees as shown on the chart. Into the flight deck then, and you will see that we are currently at the moment at 12,000 feet in the hold at Igris. So the idea will be, obviously we will exit the hold, check everything that is programming correctly into the box, and then we're going to fly this approach all the way in, get down low enough below the clouds, and then we can switch off the autopilot and manually, visually fly the aircraft for the landing. As you'll remember, we need to have a minimum required navigation performance of 0.3. We can check this out by going to the progress page, and there we can see that the GPS accuracy is estimated to be 0.03. so basically the accuracy at this moment is very high. If you are doing this approach in the Phoenix aircraft, you will absolutely need to go ahead and check this, because the Phoenix team have actually made it so that these estimations and GPS accuracy is based on real world performance. So they have actually gone in with a database of the satellites that provide aircraft with the GPS, and just occasionally if they're a little bit out of sync or out of range, as can obviously happen in the real world, you'll see that the aircraft does become downgraded for a little period. If that is the case, then you may not actually be allowed to fly this approach. You could always enter the hold and wait for that nav accuracy to return, but very important that you check this, because if the accuracy isn't high, particularly on an approach like this, you really do run a risk of straying a little bit too close to the surrounding terrain. One of the things that you must have done as well during the cruise to your destination is make sure that the coding all matches up. So often you'll see on the live streams that whilst we're in the cruise, I will go through and just check that all of the waypoints that I can see here on the chart match up with the waypoints that we've got here, as well as making sure that any hard mandatory constraints are also locked in as well. We're obviously at Igris at the moment. We then go to Sama, then 430, 428, and you literally just need to go through and follow all these through. We can then see at Kilo Tango 424 we want to be at a minimum of 7,900 feet. We can go ahead and check that now. Here it is, 424, and it's telling me that the aircraft at this point is going to be at 8,905. That's fine, as long as we're above 7,900 feet. Because this isn't a hard constraint, this is just a minimum. That is the lowest that we need to be there. You can also see there's a max speed there of 220 knots. Well, that's not actually shown here. You can go in and edit that if you wish, but personally, for an approach such as this, I would like to be configured a lot below that particular speed. In fact, if I was flying this approach, I would want to be at the very minimum flaps 1 by this point and around 180 knots. So I'm going to help the aircraft and give it a bit more information at this point. I'm going to pop in 180 knots here, and it will then be able to plan the approach much better based on that constraint. So we can go ahead and edit that. We can see now if we scroll through, that should be there waiting for us. There it is. If we go a little bit further then, let's check to see what the final approach fix has in store. We can see the final approach fix is 419, and that is shown just here. We've also got a max speed just before it at 421 of 165 knots. That is also shown just here. This is the really important one then. We have to absolutely be at 7,400 feet by this point, and we can just double check that that is a hard constraint by making sure that there is no plus or minus just here. And because by this point I want to be at my final approach speed, so my VAP speed, then I can add in another speed constraint there if I wish. But to be honest, what I will probably do on an approach such as this is by Kilo Tango 419, I would have my gear down, I would have flaps 3, so really all I've got left to do is select flaps full when I know I am committing to landing. I will also be in managed speed, so we don't need to go ahead and pop a speed constraint into here because managed speed will be taking care of that anyway. So we've now left the hold and we are on our final approach path. Our aircraft is currently set to 11,000. We are in nav mode and we're also in managed speed. The approach phase has been activated, so we're just basically slowing down to green dot. We'll start configuring pretty soon. And we can also see here, just coming in on the navigation display, that is the point that we should commence the descent again to make sure we hit that final approach fix constraint. Well, as we are also going to start slowing down, there's no danger for us if we started that descent a little bit earlier to give us time to configure. We're now in the final turn, so let's go ahead and start configuring. Let's select our flaps 1, at which point the aircraft will then start to target S speed, so that's slowing down. And with that, let's go and set 7,400 feet here on the FCU. And we'll push for a managed descent. So there we go, FMA check, we've got descent 7,400 feet. Remembering, of course, it will not allow us to go any lower than 7,900 feet until we've passed this 424 waypoint. This is the kind of approach that once everything is all set up, you really can just sit back, monitoring things as well, of course, but see that you're giving your passengers an absolutely fabulous approach. A little bit cloudy today, but on a clear day this would look absolutely spectacular. Try doing this in lower visibility though, just close to the minimums, and well, it's perhaps a little bit more unnerving. We can see here as well, here in the Phoenix, we've got the moving charts, so you can see where we are on the approach to our airport. Just coming around now, heading towards the Kilo Tango 424. I'm going to get flaps 2 out, and that's going to add lots of drag, which will enable us to get down safely to 7,400 feet by the final approach point. So let's go ahead and do that now. With flaps 2 now out, the aircraft will target f-speed, so slows us right down. We've now got lots of time before we reach 419, easily able to achieve the altitude of 7,400 feet. Once we're at 7,400 feet, we'll be able to activate the final approach phase to fly the final part of this, get us down beneath the clouds, and then when we can see the airport, we can knock off our autopilot and bring her in for a manual landing. So we're now coming up to our final approach point. At this point we'll get gear down, arm the spoilers, flaps 3, and we're now all configured to make this final turn in the descent towards the runway. As 7,400 feet is reached, we can then also arm our final approach. Here comes our VDEV scale. So let's go ahead, arm that. We can now see approach nav final blue. Final approach mode is captured. We want to then go ahead and set our missed approach altitude, which for this approach is 10,500 feet. And now it's a case of looking out the window. We'll be taking around this little bit of terrain, and then we'll come in nice and steady for our runway, which should be somewhere just over here. A little bit hazy as well today. Radio altimeter is alive. Once we're happy that we're going to commit to landing, we'll then go ahead and set flaps full. So you'll see we're still holding the VDEV good and fine. One final gross check you can do as well as you're going through passing the various waypoints is you can cross-reference the altitude you should be at the certain waypoints. So at Kilo Tango 418 we should be at 5,410. And in a minute we should roll out and see that runway. Arguably this is probably a lot easier in real life to do, because the pilot can obviously look left, right and see a little bit clearer, whereas here in the simulator, unless you're flying in virtual reality of course, it's a little more difficult to achieve. There we go, runway is in sight. So I'm now going to disconnect our autopilot. We don't have to stick strictly to the track lines anymore. Happy that we are visual with the runway and the terrain of course. So flaps full. We then run the landing checklist. And we want to try and obviously get on that centre line as early as we can. Not easy to do here, admittedly.
$500. $100 above. Minimum.
Just bring that back around. We overshot a little bit, but we should be okay.
$100.
And then from here it should just be like any normal 50, approach.
40, 30, 20, retard. 5.
A little bit long in the landing actually, we overshot that, so in real life we should probably have gone round again. But there we are, a fun approach to do, and of course as a home simulator approach, if anything goes wrong it doesn't matter, but we can enjoy and try again. But a really nice new approach that has been brought in to Kathmandu via NavBlue, brand new this month. So if you do have a Navigraph subscription, that will be available for you to go ahead and try right now. Let me know how you get on in the approach as well down below in the comments. Love to hear how you found this approach and perhaps any little tips or tricks you have discovered when flying it. Doing it in bad weather? Well, not strictly allowed, but of course this is a simulator, so we can all go ahead and enjoy and have fun. Thanks so much for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please do hit the like button, and of course if you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on that notifications bell for future live stream announcements and new content. Thanks very much. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye for now.